More than a century ago, in a small Serbian village called Vladimirovic, a 90-year-old granny called Baba Anujka was arrested. Apparently, she was involved in a poison scandal where she was guilty of creating so-called love potions. But love was not the right outcome, since men who drank these magic liquids ended up dead. This Baba created a laboratory inside her house where she mixed various herbs and acted as a healer. Some potions often were used to end spouses. These potions contained arsenic. Arsenic is a toxic heavy metal which disrupts the body's ability to produce energy. Baba Anujka would ask, how heavy is the problem? Meaning, how heavy was the future victim? Then she would make appropriate dose and usually sell such potions to disgruntled wives. It is estimated that her potions killed from 50 to 150 people. Since she was ending people indirectly, she is low in this list. But still, she was a granny killer. Also, she is the oldest killer in this list. She lived to be 100 years old. In 1940s, a seemingly little sweet lady was living in Sydney. But the problem was that Caroline, the sweet old lady, was living in a bad apartment filled with rats. Not satisfied with her living conditions, she suspiciously started visiting her old stepmother, which was living in a much more comfortable house. Caroline was a good cook and often served her friends various biscuits, tea and cakes. So her 87-year-old stepmom had zero suspicion that one eventful day she would be served tea with something extra. Thallium, a highly toxic and odorless metal often used as a rat poison. The poor stepmother died and Caroline inherited the house. But it was not over. For thrill reasons, she started offering other relatives, that includes 2 relatives by marriage and 1 sister-in-law. Later, 2 more relatives visited her. Damn, the cakes must have been really good. Anyway, the 2 new healthy relatives visited Caroline and one of them fell seriously ill. Thankfully, of those 2, a guy by the name of John Downey had read a news article of a similar poisoning and connected the dots, since both poisonings had similar effects. He realized that his mother-in-law was poisoned by Caroline, but he had to get the evidence, so he visited the murder granny again and was served tea by creepy Caroline. Under the pretense of topping tea up, he slipped into the kitchen and poured the tea into a jar. He took this jar to the police and it turned out that it had enough thallium to kill things bigger than a simple rat. During the trial, she smiled constantly, even bursting into fits of laughter.
私が毒を手に入れる手段がないですよ。
Black widow is a term given to women who kill their husbands. That's because after the mating, black widow spiders eat their male lovers. This Japanese granny didn't eat her husbands, but she did poison them with cyanide. Somehow, her first husband survived with her for 25 years, then died due to illness. Maybe that triggered something in Chisako's brain, but next spouse wasn't so lucky. By the way, her killing spree started when she was 61 years old, a proper granny murderer. So the next husband was fed cyanide capsules, but he survived. However, after the attack he was left with various health problems and died just a year after. The next victim died in 2012 and other 2 husbands both in 2013. This Baba was changing men like socks. The reason for the attacks? Money. They all were well off and had savings. It is estimated that she may have been involved in 10 murders. She once said that humans are like mosquitoes and killing them is not a big deal.
Very active in the Mexican Chamber of Commerce.
In 1980s, a seemingly good-hearted old lady opened her house for old or mentally ill people who were in a rough spot. Dorothea was wearing vintage clothing, big glasses, and let her hair be grey. But behind her public facade, something more sinister was hiding. She was a degenerate, that's what she was hiding. She would overdose her residents with various substances such as codeine, diazepam and flurazepam. Once they were all dead, she would chop them up and bury bodies in backyard. After that, she would act as if they were alive and cash in their social security checks. Dorothea was caught when one social worker, Judy Moyes, was not convinced of Dorothea's story that one of her residents packed his bags and went away. I mean, it's not that hard to become suspicious when you see mounds of dirt in backyard when you drive by the house. Anyway, Murder House Granny was given life sentence. She killed 9 people, 7 were found in the yard. Now this house was sold to this couple.
Bargain basement discount due to the house's notorious history.
The price was killer.
Not sure if she's technically a granny, but since she was nicknamed Giggling Granny, who am I to judge? Her last murder happened in 1954 when she was 49 years old, but still a grandmother. With her first husband she had 4 kids. 2 died. When alive kids grew, one of them, daughter Melvina, had 2 babies of her own. She lived with her mother, who was actually a secret monster, and once she noticed her standing near her baby with a sharp hairpin. Melvina was quite hammered, so she was not sure what she saw. However, it turns out that the baby was dead. Later, Melvina, after having a nasty fight with her monster mother, went to visit her father. During that time, Nanny Doss, the monster mother, aka Giggling Granny, killed another grandson, Melvina's second kid. But not before taking an insurance which paid $500 for a dead baby grandson. Nanny also killed her own mother, a sister and 4 husbands. She was arrested only in 1954 when she killed her last husband. He was found to be poisoned with arsenic. I have a question for you viewers. If someone killed possibly, let's just say 100 babies, how long they should serve in prison? 30 years? 50 years? 1000? Well, apparently in the 1950s Japan you could get only 4 years of sentence. That's what happened when a midwife, Miyuki Ishikawa, was caught with her pants down. After World War II, Japan was in a dire situation with many people living beyond poverty and having no means to raise their babies. So they gave them away in order to get rid of them. Also, these parents knew what would happen to their babies. Most of midwives which worked with Ishikawa knew what was happening and resigned. However, none of them told anything to authorities. Anyway, police finally discovered the dead babies, and since Ishikawa killed them indirectly, meaning malnutrition and thirst, her sentence was just reduced to 4 years. Also, she worked together with her husband and a doctor who made fake death certificates.
И она не только его убила, она убила в 265-й, 47-го.
This granny has names such as Granny Ripper and Baba Yaga. She was arrested in Russia in 2015, so her age at the time was 68, which makes her a granny. She is associated with 14 murders, but Baba Yaga is only convicted for 2. It is believed that she also is a cannibal, since some parts of her victims were missing. She kept diaries where she described her victims. First in 2000, when her husband disappeared, she claimed that he led her after she confronted him about cheating. He is still missing today. Her neighbor claimed that Tamara was obsessed with Russian serial killer Andrei Chikatilo and studied his methods. She also had an apartment where she rented out her rooms. The tenants couldn't stand her and most of them ran away from such psycho landlord. However, one dude was not that lucky since he was killed and dismembered. By the way, he wasn't the last tenant. More lived after him, not knowing what horrors happened previously. Imagine living with this crazy evil granny which, while you lay in your bed, is walking around in dark corridors, possibly lurking near the door of your room. Anyway, when her apartment was being renovated, she was given a place to live by an older lady. That didn't end up well, and eventually she was killed too, cut to pieces, and her head was boiled in a pot. What's up with these serial killers and pots?
Беспризорный был этот ребенок, и она его включила на меня.
Sofia Zhukova is the only granny here which I would describe as someone who could be a horror character from a slasher movie. Unlike other murder grannies here, she killed her victims with an axe and not poison. It all started in 2005 when she was 66 years old. It was the year when her husband died. Maybe his death had something to do with her rotten brain, but she increasingly became rude with her neighbors. She was often seen walking with camo clothes and carrying an axe. But people thought that the threats coming from this old woman were empty and the axe was just probably because she was working as a butcher. Well, they were wrong. In 2005, one day, she randomly kidnapped and chopped 8-year-old girl. She even called anonymously girl's mother to taunt her, saying that her daughter is still alive. In 2013, Zhukova's friend visited her in the apartment only to be killed soon after. It is said that this murder granny also cooked meat pies and started offering them to her neighbors, which was indeed peculiar since she was usually rude and aggressive towards her neighbors. Police came to her apartment and found some blood spatter. However, they were persuaded with fictional story that the victim had a nosebleed and threw the blood on the walls by waving her bloody hand due to argument. Murder granny told police that her friend simply left to live with her relatives. I guess police was quite convinced. Nothing to see here. The last victim was killed in 2019. He was a 57-year-old janitor Vasily who rented a room in her apartment. He was also chopped up with an axe and the neighbors heard everything. The sounds of loud thump, groaning and eventually furious scrubbing, which means she was trying to rid the evidence of blood. Police found some meat in her fridge, meaning she was also a cannibal. Zhukova was arrested and before she could serve time, old Fard died due to complications of virus with a bear name. Yes, you can see here how she's laughing at her victims. England had one of the most prolific serial killers in history, and it was a woman. Born in 18th century, she partook in so-called baby farming, which was a practice of adopting unwanted babies for money. First, she actually took care of the children, but later the path took a little bit darker turn. She started giving louder babies so-called mother's friend, which is a syrup with opium. Such elixir is not the prime reason for deaths. These babies died out of hunger and thirst because, due to such a liquid, they became disinclined for food. But soon this evil woman realized that it was quite inefficient, so she also started strangling them. By the way, this is a cut from a real advertisement written by this monster. It is estimated that she may have been responsible for 400 deaths. That's quite insane. Ted Bundy did like 36, this witch 400. Anyway, the reason why she wasn't caught sooner was that at the time it was a stigma to give birth out of wedlock. Parents wanted to keep it a secret. She was arrested in 1896 and later hanged.